after I've finished animating in Photoshop and flatten all the files, the other way I usually output is through After Effects, because it allows me to save time and do more effects on top of it at the end of the production. Okay, first is go to After Effects, File, Import Files. You can also import multiple files. We're going to go with the simple sequence. And then when you import file, make sure you choose composition retain layer size, because if you do footage, that means it will generate a flat file or a sequence. If you only do composition, sometimes it will center all your files to the center of the canvas. It might not be where you want your files to be. So the composition retain layer sizes pretty much leave the whole native file untouched, and is the most ideal for going from between Photoshop to After Effects. And I usually keep it on editable layer files. You see, it generates a composition the moment you enter it, and it leaves every file where it's supposed to be. I import it. I usually go to this button here to check composition settings and make sure that this composition is the length that I want. 1 second and 15 frames is exactly how I want it, and so I do no changes there. If I want to do changes, I can change it to, let's say, 2 seconds. Then the composition get longer, and I pretty much need to extend the background to fit the whole composition, so nothing is disappearing. The next step is that I bring all the file to a certain length of time frame, and right now I put every one of them on 5 frames. I'm going to put it, the ones in between will be on 2 or 3 frames is usually the best. And then select them. I select the first drawing that I want to be the first in sequence, and then I go up to the last drawing and right click to keyframe assistant and do sequence layer. You can do overlap too sometimes for certain kind of effects. It usually gives you a more, see, this sequence only need 1 second. So yeah, doesn't need that all the other. So after it's adjusted, I hit 0, then you just stop playing. That's how I preview. If you're dealing with sound, you can press Control key, then it will scrub. But for this small sequence, it doesn't have sound, so I'll show you the sound later. And then I can go to layer and make a new solid for any of those masking effects, like those color effects that I want to do. And then I pick the pen tool, and then go to the solid mask and go to mask feather. And then change the mode to say overlay or soft light, and you can also go to transform and change the opacity of the layer to be a little bit more subtle. There, then you get the subtle gradient here. It's the upside of using it in After Effects instead of doing it in Photoshop is just because this factor, it takes up less room, and you don't have to have the cumbersome layers all on one file. So yeah, that's why I do it here. And then another thing that I can easily add without going through every drawings is to add a new adjustment layer and go to effects, add blur, as I usually add a regular blur, and ta-da, go. Suddenly it's more atmospheric with that blur. And then you get that very saturated anime look. And then after you pretty much finish your animation in After Effects, you can go to Composition, Add to Render Queue. I usually keep it on best settings. You can also do half, third for pre-render. And then render it QuickTime. If you have audio, do audio output. But for this one, we don't have an audio. And format is H2. I kind of keep it to H.264 because it's just easier. Or I can do an MP4, which is H.264 in general. But it will resize it to something that's more friendly for a MP4 size by default. And then you click render. After Effects render is a whole lot faster than Photoshop. That's also another plus. And then you go and find your file. Here we go. Yep. That's it for this tutorial for outputting. When you are actually doing, I'm not saving. When you're actually doing a whole movie, like a whole minute or so, it's a little bit different. For this movie, because it's so short for a client, I decided to do it all on one composition. I usually actually put them on different compositions. And this one already have the final sound in it, so you can actually scrub. Yeah, that's how scrubbing sound like. Not very pleasant. That's why usually we have focal track separated from all the other sound effects when we are animating, and then do the final track for the final. That's it. You can also, it gets a little messy, but I'm gonna cover it in a different video when it's a whole movie. Sometimes you can do all the scenes in one place, with different composition, and you double click. It's one composition, so you can have like a lot of composition in one place, in one file. That is if the movie is short. Yeah. And see you next time. If you like my tutorials, please join me on Patreon, because that's where I am going to share all my cheats to save time on production.